I rise to oppose the proposition. This House believes that prisons should be abolished. Many arguments will be made saying that prisons are bad and that the prison system is flawed, and many of these arguments are very valid. But even if the prison system is flawed, that does not mean we need to get rid of every single prison that we have. Prisons can be reformed and the number of them that we have reduced. This will be very, very beneficial to all the societies around the world. First, I'd like to define a few terms. The first term is to reform, which is to amend or improve by change of reform or removal of faults or abuses. Abolish, formally put an end to. Prisons, a building or vessel in which people are legally held as a punishment for crimes they have committed or while awaiting trial. I reserve the right to define any other terms as seen necessary throughout the round, and to look at framework or topic analysis or way to judge the round. The proposition must prove that all prisons must be abolished due to the word abolish. Contention 1, reformation. Time magazine in 2010 took its viewers through one of the world's most humane prisons located in Norway. To quote the magazine, the maximum sentence in Norway, even for murder, is 21 years. Since most of the inmates will eventually return to society, prisons mimic the outside world as much as possible to prepare them for freedom. Instead of abolishing prisons, the effort could be put towards reducing the amount of prisons that we have and making them nicer places. This is the type of reform that other countries should use inside of their prison systems. The inmates are allowed to live as they would in the real world, just inside of the safety of the prisons, therefore protecting the inmates and the innocents around the world and preparing them to go back to society, which will help a lot of problems that they have. Contention 2, prisons are important. Included in the definition of prison is military prisons. Dangerous people all the way from terrorists to serial killers need places to be held, and especially murderers and such, while awaiting trial. Prisons should be used as a last resort for cases where people have been put on trial and there are no other options. Prison Abolition and Alternatives from Prison Justice in 2008 writes that imprisonment should be a last resort. The presumption should be against its use. Before any offender is incarcerated, the prosecution should bear the burden of proving in an evidentiary hearing that no other alternative exists. So therefore prisons will be the last alternative, and many other alternatives should be looked at beforehand, such as, house arrest and things like that. So in conclusion, prisons are very important in today's society. They provide confinement for dangerous criminals and protect the innocents of the world. They also provide a good waiting place and holding place while people are going to be put under trial. And the number of prisons that we have should be reduced, and the system should be reformed, but we do not need to abolish prisons. Most of the problems that we'll see inside, or supposedly inside of these prisons, are not actually in the prisons, they're inside of the system. So to move on now to my opponent's case, the first thing she says is that prisons should be abolished and rebuilt. What I would like to point out is that this is reform. This is exactly what I'm saying we should do. You can't say that prisons should be abolished and then rebuilding them. That's just redoing prisons. So this is actually an opposition argument. So the next thing she says is that prisons are racist and violent, and a continuation of the British prison system that the American systems are. This doesn't really make sense. The racist and violent part does make sense, but again, if we reform these prisons and make them safer, better places, then none of this is going to be happening. And the part about the British system does not make sense. The next thing she says is that American prison system is a recontinuation of slavery. But no. First of all, I'd like to point out that this is not just the American system that we're looking at. We need to be looking at systems all around the world because this topic is worldwide. And second of all, slavery is when you take innocent people and hold them against their will and force them to do things against their will, with their life on the line. This is not what prison is. Prison is where we take people who have done violent, horrible things against our societies and governments and against other individuals, and we take them and we punish them here. Next, she says it's about the race and not the crime. This is true, but this is not a problem with the prisons or the prison system. This is actually a problem with the people arresting people and the judges who are putting the people into prisons. It's not the prisons themselves, so we should reform the system if that's what we're talking about. That's actually not even topical. She says there's evidence of physical, psychological, and sexual abuse inside of these prisons. If we are reforming these prisons, then none of this is going to happen. So again, reform. She talks about a lot of people who've had human rights abuses against them. What we need to think about is, if there are drunk driving accidents, does that mean that we need to ban alcohol? No, it means we need to go buy it and fix the system. If you have a brand new car and the car's not running, we don't throw away the car, we take it to a mechanic and we get it fixed. And that's what we need to do with our prison systems. She's talking about overpopulated prisons. I would like to cross by my contention too, where we say that prison will be the last resort, and so people going there will have been tried and put towards other alternatives as much as possible. She says how we are denying the people the 8th Amendment, and again, talking about my ban on alcohol analogy. You can't ban alcohol just because there are drunk driving accidents. We can't get rid of prisons just because there are human rights abuses. We need to fix these abuses, which is why reform. She talks about how America has the highest level of industrialized advanced society, but the largest prison system. Cross-apply my contention too, and people cross-apply my contention too. She says that 30% of adult offenders are arrested and rearrested after they get out. But being arrested does not necessarily mean that you have committed a crime. And last, she says the only way to humanly deal with prisons is to do away with it. No, we must reform them. Thank you very much, and I'd like to encourage a vote for the opposition.